If you were in Borno State, because
Yes.
I'm trying to get this picture.
Yes.
If you were in Borno State,
Yes.
if you lived in Adamawa State,
Yes.
and if you lived in Yobe State,
Yes.
would you be happy if someone starts talking about road construction, talking about electricity, when you know your people are being killed daily? A lot of them have actually walked through the borders into neighboring countries because of being displaced.
No, but the issue is that you should have asked yourself, how did we get there? What are the systemic analysis? How did we get there? You know, over the years, we had governments that had huge budgets. What did they do with it? In terms of providing, quality primary schools, in terms of providing quality secondary schools, in terms of providing quality healthcare, in terms of providing jobs for people, and so on. How did we get there?
You can only ask
when
you're trying to talk about
how did we get a large army?
the crisis.
How did we get a large army of people that are willing
how
to be
do
used?
we raise this question if we're
I'm
not
saying
talking
that,
about security?
No, I'm saying that we need to look at this systemic breakdown, do a proper systemic analysis, and see how we can fix it. And it should be a response. You see, the media should go beyond what they call the bubblegum discourse. You know, there's Professor Goy Berger, of one of the universities in South Africa. He's the one who said, look, the media should always elevate the discourse, should elevate the narrative. That is our responsibility. That's why they say we are agenda setters. It's not to follow, some pepper soup gossip, but to concretely put the issues on the agenda. I'm saying
can we
that
look at the system,
we
the
need to
failed system
put
as
the
you talked
issues
about?
of development on the table.
Let's look at the system.
Yes.
Let's analyze the
Yes.
system that you talked about. You said in the past there have been government that had huge budgets.
Yes, all over Nigeria.
And yet they did not build schools, they did not
Yes.
build roads.
I mean,
Do
what
you know that
happened?
the bulk of this large army you're talking about
Yes.
are very well educated? You know that. Yet they are destroying schools, yet they do not want to have a government. But they are educated, because if you go to the camp, I happen to have gone to one of the camps where
Yes.
they were displaced.
Yes.
They had complete hospital equipment, they had surgery equipment there. That tells you that they had doctors, they had all sorts of people in that place.
Yes.
So how is it that those people who are educated do not want to go
What
back
of
to
their
school? We should not
what
look
of
at
their foot soldiers? In every insurgency, you have the core leaders, of course, and you don't forget that you have different cells, and you have the foot soldiers. So, what's the quality of education of the foot soldiers? What do they depend on? Do they have a job? For instance, I would be surprised if somebody is a medical doctor who goes to work in the morning and returns in the evening, and then you ask him to be an insurgent. Or, a businessman, some kind of person who is maybe a development analyst who has a big job somewhere, and you think that it will be attractive for him to in the morning go and pick up arms and
Does he need to pick up? He could fund those carrying their arms, and they are doing that, aren't they?
No, of course there are people who are funding, but I'm saying that, you see, we need to change the narrative. The narrative, we can't depend on this narrative about war, about Boko Haram, about insurgency. That can't be the only narrative in Nigeria.
In very clear terms, you don't want to talk about security in Nigeria.
No, it's not that. You see, when you even talk about security, we also tend to oversimplify the issues of security, as if security is just about picking up arms, about the military and so on. There's a lot about social security.
Because you've been
social security.
Definitely.
It's a balance. And if you do not
Just a moment,
intervene
sir.
largely on the issue of social security, then you get the other one.
Just a moment, sir. There's definitely one angle of it, because we're talking about security, we're looking at security, and you've said that, we should change the narrative. This is, the media needs to change the discourse. I'm just wondering if it's something you're not willing to speak on, because if even this morning, while doing our own little session, one of the things that came to the fore was, the situation in Nasarawa State. We had the situation in Nasarawa State just a couple of days ago. Shiites who were doing their procession were attacked. It was also in the news that the Yobe State government or governor had gone to visit these people who were attacked. So this kind of things continue to make the rounds in the news. And of course, as media people, we must take them, mustn't we?
Yes, we should. But I tell you, have we bothered to find out that there is crippling authoritarianism and totalitarianism in states that are not even involved in any crisis at all? And what are we doing about it?
What's the primary responsibility of government? What's the primary responsibility of government? You've been in government, and I thought the primary responsibility of government is protection of lives and property, and that is security.
Yeah, of course.
So if we have a seeming lack or loophole in some of that in some part of the country, shouldn't that be the main talking point of everyone in Nigeria?
No, it should, but I'm saying that the way we approach it sometimes can be very simplistic. For instance, the fact that insurgents took over Vintim, which homestead of the chief of defense staff, it's been presented as if the man is docile, he doesn't know what he's doing, and so on. I mean, for me, you see, analysts of war and conflict will laugh at that, who laugh at us, because it's like saying that you want to assess Field Marshal Montgomery, on the issues on Binstead, his homestead. That's funny. Or General Norman Schwarzkopf. These were people who commanded wars. So I'm saying that in putting these issues on the table, we should not oversimplify issues. The fact that Vintim was taken, how does that affect the man's quality as chief of defense staff? How does it affect it? Because the insurgents could have taken anywhere.
Now, aside the fact, I mean, we have chosen to talk about security, so it's definitely our agenda for the day, and I don't think that we're going to put it on the back burner. But my point is, what is your perspective? You say it is oversimplified oftentimes when it is discussed, but what is your perspective on security? Help us discuss it in a way that is not oversimplified.
Okay, that's what I've just said. I said, look, one, we must do a balance. Issues of social security. Because in discussing security, we seem to narrow it down to maybe the security forces, about guns and ammunition, and so on and so forth. Even in the world today, the issues of social security is perhaps the biggest issue. How people live, how they, you educate them, healthcare issues, general social welfare, the issues of jobs, the issues of provision of housing, and so on. I'm saying that in what way have we held government accountable to provide these issues? Because if you do not provide these issues, if you do not worry, it's like you living with a neighbor whose children are not going to school. If you do not, if you send your children, if you like, you send your children to Harvard and Cambridge, and then you have a neighbor whose children don't go anywhere, and they're there, they will be the ones to hack down your children.
You must worry. You're widely traveled around the country.
Yes, you must worry.
What is your perspective on how governments, I'm asking this, cutting across federal, state, and local governments, what's your perspective on how they are handling the issue of social security, if that's the perspective you want to approach it from?
Yes, you see, for instance, if you look at the budget, for instance, I want us to, as a media institution in Nigeria, I want us to put on the grill. For instance, if you look at the entire budget, what percentage of the entire budget actually goes to issues of social security, and how has the government handled it? I'm saying that, for instance, in the whole of the Northeast, the fact that you have an army of people who are available to be used by insurgents, that itself is a failure of government, but a failure in the area of social security. It meant that what we ought to have done in the areas of education, in the areas of provision of jobs, in the areas of healthcare, in the areas of social enlightenment and so on. Government, the elite of those areas, or the successive governors of those areas abandoned their responsibility.
That is surely
and that's what has led to what we are seeing today.